Very good evening and a warm welcome to all the parents who have joined us on time today in this session with Dr. Lalit. So a very warm welcome and good evening to Dr. Lalit as well. Let me give a quick, we all know Dr. Lalit, but let me give a quick introduction of him to the parents. So Dr. Lalit MITTAL, as we know, he's the director of Giggles Clinics and co-director of My Own Space. He has an experience of more than 10 years in dealing with children on the autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and other developmental disorders. He has immense interest in autism, especially the biomedical approaches on which he has interacted, and he continues to interact with a lot of parents through online webinars as well as seminars. He's very active and he takes a lot of initiative in patiently connecting to the parents, and we all enjoy his programs that we have with him. On that note, just a line on Harsha. Today, we are here connected on the Harsha from NutriNeuron platform. So Harsha from NutriNeuron is a pan-India social responsibility initiative. It's like an ecosystem that we try to build for the parents, to empower the parents with awareness. Along with medical solution, we need awareness and we need guidance to deal with our children in everyday life. So that is what Harsha empowers the parents to be. Thank you so much, everyone. And let's get started with the session, Doctor. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Dipanvita, for inviting me on this platform. And so we'll begin with the session without wasting time. So the today's topic, which is given to me, is gut dysbiosis and synaptic pruning in autism. So we had discussed a lot about gut dysbiosis in past also. Many of us know that gut dysbiosis is a problematic condition. But there is something which goes beyond gut dysbiosis in the brain that we call as synaptic pruning. So probably by the end of this webinar, we will be able to know some of the unanswered questions which are there in autism. We know that in the ratio of autism in males is 4:1. That means 4 times males are affected than females. But still the question was remain unanswered why it has happened. Another important thing which always goes in our mind is, why is that autism happens only at the age of 2 to 3 years? Or I would say more practically, why the autism appears in the kid at the age of 2 to 3 years. Before that, he's absolutely fine. It goes to the school. He's just like a neurotypical child. But what happens suddenly that period of 2 to 4 years, that all those things start appearing and be able to know that something is going in our kid wrong. And when we go for an examination, we find the child is in the spectrum. So it becomes a whole new world to us without knowing what was the cause. And other thing, ADHD, comparing ADHD prognosis in terms of autism in adolescence. So probably these are some of the 3 most important questions which we may be able to get an answer after going through this today's webinar. So a bit about gut dysbiosis, then we'll go to the synaptic pruning. So gut dysbiosis, first we know what is this gut microbiota. Now there are a lot of trillions and trillions of microbes which are present in our human body, and those combination of all these human the microbes which are present, either it may be protozoa, bacteria, or fungi, all the collection of all these different organisms which are present in our body, they are called as microbiota. Now these microbiota, they have their genetic material like we do have. So, and it is very interesting to know that the DNA of this microbiota is 10 times more than the DNA of our body. So you can imagine that the ratio of the human DNA is just 1/10 of that of the DNA of the microbiota. So the microbiotas in our body are so much dominant that we are more of a microbiota, we are more of a microbiota species than a human body. So this is the importance of this gut microbiota which is present in our body. So said that, it is very clear that we have to keep our microbiota in a very healthy environment. If anything disturbs that, definitely it will affect our genetic material, or what we call as the DNA. So that is the whole story of this gut dysbiosis. Anything which affects the genetic material of the microbiota will in turn affect the genetic makeup of our body, which in turn can land up into so many diseases in future or at any time. So this is about what exactly the gut microbiota means. Now, if we go about the gut microbiota, it plays a very, very important role in maintaining all the different functions of the body. I won't go into the detail of this, but yes, it plays a very important role in maintaining the health, in preventing us from many diseases like diabetes, coronary artery disease, arthritis, allergic problems, diabetes, obesity. So you mentioned any cause, the microbiota would definitely play an important role. So this is the importance, and the diagram here, it is showing from going from the red to the blue zone. So the red zone is all the microbiota which is disturbed, or what we call as gut dysbiosis. Now these, as a result of all these factors, the body can land up into lot of medical issues or problems or neuropsychiatric issues. So that is why the cumulative evidence which has been done over a period of time, it clearly demonstrates that this microbiota, human microbiota, plays a very important role in maintaining our health in a very balanced and nutritional state. If it is disturbed, it can disturb the immune system, it can disturb anything right from the fetal age, means when the child is in the womb, up to an adult age or any age during the span of an human being. So why is this microbiota important? Now, the period of 2 to 3 years is very, very critical, because if the gut of a child during the age of 2 to 3 years is very, very healthy, or it is, I would say it is balanced, then it will shape the microbiota of an adult. Means to say, the child with a gut microbiota at the age of 2 to 4 years will define the gut microbiota which he will have during an adult life. So if a child who has been exposed to a lot of antibiotics, if he is a preterm, or if he has taken, just give me a second, please, just give me a second. Sorry. So if he has taken a lot of antibiotics, or he is a preterm, stayed in a nursery for a longer period of time, definitely he would have been exposed to a lot of antibiotics. Now, when he is exposed to a lot of antibiotics, his gut flora will be definitely affected. It will go into a stage of gut dysbiosis. Now, if that is disturbed, then definitely the future gut microbiota as an adult will also be affected. So that is the importance of the first colonizing bacteria. Colonizing means the first bacteria which are present when the child is born. And those are bifidobacteria, lactobacilli. So that is why these bifidobacteria, lactobacilli are so important, because they will nurture the gut of an human being as an adult when he goes into an adult stage. Another important thing, they play a very important role in maturization or educating the immune system, so that we get prevented from a lot of allergic conditions. The ratio of allergic conditions like asthma, obesity, diabetes, and etc., allergic rhinitis, adenoid hypertrophy, is approximately 3 to 4 times more in an neurodiverse kids than compared to neurotypical kids. The reason why is that because, again, the gut microbiota. So here we are dealing more in terms of prevention rather than treatment. We know that we don't have much treatment for the neuropsychiatric or neurodevelopmental disorders. We can modify them. So that is the importance when we work through these gut microbiota, or we try to modify the gut microbiota. So what is this microbial diversity? Now, this is a very simple diagram I have shown, that when the child is in the womb, that is in the uterus, when the child is born at the birth, when he's in the age of infancy, infancy means somewhere less than 1 year, and when it is in the adult childhood, that is 2 to 4 years of age. Now, again, this 2 to 4 years of age is very, very critical, what we call as first 1,000 years of life. The first 1,000 years of life comes out to be somewhere between 3 to 4 years of age. So that is the importance, because that first 1,000 years of life are the golden period of your life, which will demonstrate your, I would say, your immunity, your gut maturity, your health in future life. So if you are able to preserve your first 1,000 years of life, then definitely you will definitely land up in a beautiful or healthy life. So that is the importance of gut microbiota. So there are, in the below, I have mentioned the factors. What are the factors which can affect this microbial diversity? Microbial diversity means the different type of microorganisms which are present, they should remain in harmony, and the good microbes should be present. So there are a lot of factors, as we have mentioned. The placenta. If there is a placenta previa, if there is, sometimes we see there is a lot of leaking, or there is maternal complications, or if there is a preterm delivery, or there is the child has been born through the cesarean section, or feeding issues, antibiotics, all those factors. Now, these factors doesn't mean that if a child is being exposed to all these factors, he will land up into autism or ADHD. These are will increase the probability of risk going into an spectrum kids. So this is the importance of this microbial diversity. So again, in the second picture, this is how the changes of microbiota which happens in the different age groups. So the important thing is you have to preserve the first 1,000 years of life as much as possible and maintain the microbial diversity. Now, if this microbial diversity is maintained, it will definitely help in maintaining the brain development, or what we call as the maturization of the brain, or the different cortex or different regions of the brain, or high mental functions. So now I'm switching to the brain development. Till now I was working on the gut. That means the gut dysbiosis of the gut. Now gut is considered to be a mini brain of our body. That is why we call it as an internal nervous system. EN. Internal means gut, nervous means the brain. So it is considered to be a small brain of our body, and it is connected to the big brain or the main brain through what we call as GBA, gut brain axis. Now that's a different topic, but I'll just come directly onto the brain development. So brain development starts right from infancy. That means before the age of 1, then early childhood, middle, and adolescence. So we can say the brain development continues to develop during the age of adolescence. So you can make a lot of changes. The child can learn at whatever age. The learning process is a continuous process which can happen at any age. Why? Because there is a typical property of brain, what we call as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity means the formation of the synapses, the connections can happen at any age of life. It doesn't mean if a child is of 5 years, he is not able to understand ABCD, he will never able to understand that concept in future. No. If you can work on the child, if you can develop a good synapses, good connections, because of the ability of neuroplasticity, we can definitely improve the cognition. And that is the main, concept of working the child on spectrum to improve the cognition of the child by working through this neuroplasticity concept. If this neuroplasticity won't have been there in the brain, then we would have not been able to improve the cognition of any child who's on the spectrum. So there comes the concept of what is called as synaptic pruning. Now, what is this synaptic pruning? Just imagine that these small circles, these are the brain cells. And these brain cells are connected to each other through what we call, say, wires. Or you just imagine yourself, these are small circuits, and all these circuits are connected to the wires or the cables. So the circuits are acting as the brain cells, and these connections are acting as the wires or the cables to transmit the signals. So now imagine if I switch on one button, the signal will transmit through the circuit to all the circuits. So this is the main function of these connections. It's just like a simple wiring system. Now we have in a very layman term, they say defective wiring system. In autism, there is a defective wiring system. Now, what does that mean basically? It means that when the child is born, there are a lot of connections are there, unwanted connections. But during the process, around the age of 2 to 4 years, those unwanted connections, which are not required for our body or the brain to function, they automatically get removed. This is what we call as synaptic pruning. Pruning means removing the unwanted connections which are not required in our body. So when the unwanted connections are removed, the remaining connections, they get more smooth, they get more efficient, and as a result, the logical thinking, the processing, the high mental functions develop much better in a child as it grows. And this process is hampered in the kids who are on the spectrum. Now, important thing is why this autism appears only at the age of 3 to 4 years, or somewhere between 2 to 4 years. Because many a times we say that parents complain, sir, bacha bilkul theek tha, he was absolutely fine, uski speech bhi thi, uski language bhi thi, he was just like a neurotypical child. And suddenly during the process, around the 2 to 3 years, suddenly he lost his speech. There was a regression. Now, why that happened? Because the pruning has not happened, which should have happened at the age of 2 to 4 years. Because before the age of that, he was absolutely like a neurotypical. The pruning starts during the age of 2 to 4 years. And because the pruning has not happened, the child goes into all those features of spectrum, which ultimately lands and makes him into an ASD, diagnosis. So this is the importance of synaptic pruning, and why does it happen, and what is the mechanism? I mean, what is the factor which plays a role in pruning? We'll see in the future slides. Now, this is a critical period of pruning. Now, this is the synapse formation. Now, this is the actual brain image, so we don't have to go into this because it's very confusing. For this purpose, I have made it very simple that this is before pruning. When pruning happens, unwanted connections are removed. If you can see on the right side, I think it is not clear because of the image, but the unwanted connections are removed, so you can clearly make that the things have become little less complicated compared to before. So now this synaptic pruning happens at the age of 4 to 6 years. So if any kid where the synaptic pruning has not happened, he may land up into neurodevelopmental disorders. This is the reason why majority of the ASD kids show their symptoms and appear become visible during this period of 2 to 4 to 5 years. 6 is little longer age because pruning continues to happen, but it starts from the age of 2 to 3 years. And that is why the picture appears of ASD during this age. Now, how does the synaptic pruning happens? We have discussed that unwanted connections have to be removed. When the child is born, just when he's born, there are a lot of connections, what we call as synapses or synaptogenesis. But it has to be removed so that the child goes into a phase and becomes more and more better. So that is called as pruning. Now, why is this ASD is more common in males than in females? The ratio is 4:1. I think we have answered that question through the concept of, we will discuss that in males. But why ASD becomes more prominent at the age of 2 to 4 years, that we have discussed through the concept of synaptic pruning. Because synaptic pruning happens during that age. If it doesn't happen, because of that, ASD becomes visible during that age. Why ADHD has a better outcome compared to ASD in adolescence age? Because generally, ADHD child who has been diagnosed exclusively an ADHD child without ASD, they have a better prognosis. They may come out of an ADHD component during a late adolescence. Why does that happen and why is it so? We'll see in future presentation. So is synaptic pruning being associated with autism? Yes, it is actually associated with autism, and a lot of research, hypothesis, and literature research has been done. And the scientists have found what they have found, that they have taken the brains of the adolescent child. Adolescence means they have taken somewhere between 13 to 17 age group. They have taken the brains of the adolescents of a neurotypical and as well as the, I would say, the autistic children. So what they found, that the synaptic pruning in the brains of the child who were diagnosed with autism, there the synaptic pruning was not happening. That means there were a lot of unwanted connections. Whereas in the neurotypical, there were not that much connections were there. Synaptic pruning has happened. Now, how they proved it? Because the same sample they took it when the child were very, very young. That means somewhere in the age of 1 to 2 years. Now, during that period, what they found, the synapses formation was same in both the kids, in autistic as well as in the case of the neurotypical. So this clearly demonstrates and gives an evidence that synaptic pruning is the main thing which is basically affecting and becomes more prominent in children with spectrum than in a neurotypical child. Now, this is a very simple diagram to show. Just imagine that you have a tree. This is a tree and it has a lot of branches. So a lot of branches are there. And this is the, I would say, the microglia. Now, how the synaptic pruning happens? Synaptic pruning means you are removing the unwanted connections. Now, just take this diagram. Now, brain's secret gardener is called as the microglia. Now, this is the brain, and the brain has, just imagine the branches of the tree. There will be so many branches. So those branches of the tree, small branches, they are considered to be the synapses. Okay. So now this is the scissor. Suppose I go onto the tree and cut all the branches like this, and unnecessary branches, and I cut almost all of the branches. So what I'm doing, I'm cutting the branches, but I should have cut the selective branches. But as a result, I cut all the branches. So what happens? I had done excessive pruning. I have cut more than those branches which are required to the body. So that's what we call as excessive pruning. But in autism, what happens? The pruning doesn't happen. The amount, suppose they had to cut 50% of the branches, they cut only 30%. So the pruning is happening, which is there, it is deficient. So that is the concept of this. Now, this is done by the microglia. What are microglia? They are just the simple cells in the brain which are responsible for doing the synaptic pruning. So it is considered to be the brain secret gardener. It's a very, simple diagram to make you explain that what exactly this pruning is. Now, this is a diagram to make us understand that how this gut microbiota plays an important role in relation to the synaptic pruning. So these are the this is the development of the microbiota which we have discussed in the first slide. that the microbial diversity happens in infancy, childhood, and adolescence. So if in a simple way, if the microbial diversity is poor, the pruning or the synaptic pruning might also be affected. So as a result, nowadays what we see, there are a lot and lot development delays are happening in those children who are having a bad neonatal, I would say, experience, in the sense those who are preterm, which are very low birth weight, who has been exposed to a lot of antibiotics, or those who have prolonged an ICU or nursery stay. Those may not land up in an ADHD or autism, but definitely they will be landing up in developmental delays. And why does that happen? Because those exposure of antibiotics, those exposure of IV cannulas and prolonged stay hospitalization damages their microbiota. And very rarely, and practically I'm telling that when we discharge a child, very rarely our professionals advise them to go on a long-term probiotics. Actually, it should be a recommendation, or it should be some recommendation that those children who are on a long antibiotics, they should take a long probiotics so that we are able to modify their gut microbiota. Now, this is a very simple diagram again to make us understand that how this gut microbiota is related to this synaptic pruning. Now, this is the gut microbiota. In the above, this is the gut microbiota. Gut microbiota containing different type of microorganisms. Now, it will affect the microglial activity. Microglia, I have showed, it is just like a scissor. It will be cutting your hairs, or it will be cutting your unwanted connections in the brain. Okay. So if the gut microbiota is good, it is healthy, it will stimulate the microbial activity in a healthy manner. Means this microglia or the scissor won't be overactive. Now, why it is overactive, why it is not, that is the different mechanism. We are not going to that. Just remember, if the gut is healthy, it will tell the scissor to go in a phase-wise manner. Limited selective cutting has to be done. So this is what we call as a normal synaptic pruning, because synaptic pruning has to happen. Now, suppose if the gut microbiota is disturbed due to antibiotics, due to diet, due to leaky gut, and etc. and etc. So what will happen? There will be dysregulated microbial scissor activity. Microglia means, imagine it like a scissor. So there is a dysregulated microbial. Now dysregulated means it is imbalanced. Either it will be too much active or it will be too less active. Now, and this scissor plays the role of pruning, or means cutting. So when this happens in autism spectrum, it causes very less synaptic pruning, means the decrease. Means to say, the amount of cutting or the amount of pruning which has to happen is very, very less. Whereas in an ADHD child, the synaptic pruning is delayed. Now, delayed means it should happen by the age of 2 to 4 years, but it happens by the age of 15 to 18 years. Now, because of this reason, if the synaptic pruning even happens by the age of 15 to 18 years, we can say that yes, the child will go into a, I would say, a better prognosis compared to an autistic child. Why? Because in autism, delayed pruning is not happening, it is decreased. Whereas in ADHD, it happens to be a delayed pruning. So this is the concept of this microbiota in relation to the synaptic pruning. And this probably explains that why this ADHD has a better prognosis and they come out during an adolescence age compared to an autistic child, because the pruning happens by that age. And as a result, they have a better prognosis compared to an autistic child or ASD. So this was a bit about synaptic pruning and gut dysbiosis. It was very short because it's a very long topic, but we just try to, give the highlight and the basics understanding of this gut dysbiosis and how it is related to synaptic pruning. Thank you. Thank you, Dipanwita.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lalit. I think it was a very good presentation, because the whole idea is to make it simple to understand for the parents.
Exactly.
And and that was wonderfully done. I think I personally also liked the presentation. I was totally engrossed in it. So we can take questions now from the audience. So please go ahead, parents. Any questions on the topic that was covered, or in general related to your child, please feel free to interact.
Yeah, this is regarding the this is regarding the synaptic pruning. So how to achieve this in autism? I mean, do we need to use probiotics or any other medicine? to get this
Yes,
one?
yes. First of all, we have to work at the two level. Now, this is something, it's not that if you start with the medications, you will get the, it will be resolved. They know that. It will be, we'll be able to modify that. As a result, we will be able to get a better response from the child. Now, the basic concept of synaptic pruning is to improve the cognition. It's just a very simple. And also, if that tuning is improving, we can also improve his social interaction. We can improve his, overall the sensory and other issues. But yes, definitely the cognition can also improve a bit. So for gut dysbiosis, we have to work along with the probiotics, and for synaptic pruning, now we are working through products like antioxidants, like natural flavonoids, like lutein, quercetin. So these are the products where we can work with the child to along with the probiotics to improve this balance of gut and the.
Hello. I think he is done. Next question. You can raise hand and talk, or you can put it in the chat box.
Hello, doctor. Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Sure.
please.
Yeah, just a general question. Like, I want to know, as you said, due to neuroplasticity, the cognition with age, it can improve also. So I want to know, like, so the IQ level will also improve. Suppose at a lower age, the IQ level, the score was less than at adolescence, it can improve further with training, etc.
Yes, definitely it can improve. It's not that if a child is labeled with a low IQ at the age of 5 years, it will be labeled throughout that through his whole life. With the work and activity, working on cognition activities, working on all these factors, definitely the IQ can always change. It's not a diagnosis which can remain throughout your life. Now, similarly, to add a point, ASD is not a diagnosis which will remain with the child throughout the life. If a child is diagnosed with an ASD through CARS or ESA or ADOS, any scale which they use at the age of 2 years, it doesn't mean that you will carry that diagnosis till the age of 7 years. Probably by the age of 5 or 7 years after working with the child, your efforts, professional effort, his score may come out to be in a mild category. Okay. So these are some things which keep on changing with the working of the child.
And is there any relation, like some kids, like they may show improvement in during adolescence?
Sorry.
Is it like some kids, like in the earlier age, they were like very like slow development, but in the like after adolescence, the brain development can be better, the cognition can improve further.
Yes, it can be better, but the important thing is we have to keep working with the child. It's not like that if we are the child is diagnosed with the problem, we have left him, or we are not being much involved with the child and thinking that by the age of this synaptic pruning might happen a bit and the child will improve. No, we have to keep working with the child so that those connections keep on building and unwanted connections keep on building. In a simple way, we have to keep working with the child.
So even like up to the age of say 16, 18, like is there any, I just want to know, is there any like a peak period, like during this period, the child can, we, work very hard and he can show even better progress. Is there any peak time like that?
Yes, that is the best when you can say if you are working with the child by the age of 4 to 6 years.
That is the best period.
That is the best period because that is the time where the peak of, that is the time where the initiation of synaptic pruning happens. Okay, so if you are working at the initiation of the synaptic pruning, because the peak of synaptic pruning happens at a little later age. But when the initiation of synaptic pruning happens, at that time when you start working with your child, either with the probiotics or either with the therapies, either with the, the antioxidants or whatever. The main purpose is if you start working with the child during that particular age, you can get definitely better result than working with the child at the age of 7 to 8 years.
Okay, and these antioxidants, can you just repeat again, like what type of antioxidants can be referred to?
It's lutein can be there, quercetin is there. Quercetin is the one which we are using, we are prescribing to the patients. So it can be given, but it's not that we have to give in a general. Always you have to take the guidance with the doctor, then only it has to be prescribed.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. This is Priya. I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead, Priya.
Good evening, doctor.
Good evening.
Doctor, are there any dietary recommendations that you would prescribe for kids in the spectrum to improve the synaptic pruning?
There are a lot of dietary. I think Dipanvita knows that we have discussed a lot on this dietary, and it's I can spend 3 to 4 hours on that. So the best thing would be we will share you the recordings of those dietary, because we have given a lot of seminars on food and gut and etc. So we will share you the videos. You can go through them and you will get a lot of ideas of that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, doctor. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next question, anyone? Parents, if you have any question, please go ahead. Otherwise, probably we'll close if you don't have any questions.
Hello, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, please go ahead.
Ma'am, actually, my concern is my son is 4 years old and he has echolalia, ma'am. How can I stop that, ma'am?
Echolalia is basically, you mean to say he's doing a lot of self-talking. His repetition, basically, he's repeating. Now, that thing is a part of sensory. Have you done sensory assessment for the child and OT and sensory integration?
Yes, sir. Actually, he's attending OT class and speech class, sir.
So he will give you a correct guidance how to work on that, because echolalia is something which is a part and parcel of the spectrum. So you need to work on the auditory, you need to work on the sensory, you need to work probably on his speech part along with the oromotor part. So that is something which you have to discuss with your therapist, especially who is doing the sensory integration, so that he can tell you better that what basically sensory sensations or sensory systems are affected, and accordingly you can work.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Actually, my OT, that specialist, he recommended some diet concern for my son, sir. Actually, I'm following that also. And recently he's having a lot of self-talking, sir. He's having a lot of self-talking.
See, and self-talking can be due to gut disturbances. Does he have constipation?
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm telling, self-talking can happen due to a lot of things. It can happen either due to oxalates, it can happen either due to yeast, it can happen either due to gut dysbiosis, or it can happen due to food, casein and gluten intolerance. So you need to work in detail. You can with your therapist or with your doctor, and then accordingly it has to be modified, and accordingly the diet has to be given.
Sir, my concern is it can be stopped now, sir.
What? Self-talking?
Self-talking.
It can be stopped. Yes, it can be stopped. It's not that it will be continuous, but it will be stopped. It can be stopped, but yes, you need to work with the child.
Okay, definitely, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions, parents? Sure.
Hello, sir. I just want to ask you something.
Yes.
Is there any evidence like following GFCF diet will bring some changes in the child? I mean, I just wanted to know.
Yes, there is an evidence that GFCF diet will benefit a part of the child, a part of the kids in the spectrum, provided if they have a gluten and casein intolerance. Now, blindly following a GFCF diet, if my child is following a GFCF diet, he has got the results, and another parent started following a GFCF diet without having the intolerance parameters, there is no use. We follow a GFCF diet only depending upon the parameters of intolerance the child is having, because the leaky gut issues, they are definitely affecting because of the gluten and casein. Now, once you start on a gluten and casein diet, it becomes a problem for the child. You are restricted him from all sorts of. So there becomes the importance of maintaining his nutrition by adding adequate amount of supplements which are required. It's not that just starting a Zincovit, just starting an A to Z syrup, you are giving a multivitamin to fulfill. No. In what dose, in what adequate amount, and what type of things you are restricting. It's not that if I tell you stop casein giving, you stop giving milk. Our concern is not to give casein. There are a lot of alternatives of casein-free milk that has to be given. So that thing has to be taken care. One is giving you a plan, or who is, I would say, strong enough in giving and understanding this concept, then only he should give a plan and follow that accordingly. Blindly going for a GFCF diet is no use.
Yes, because I'm asking this because I was doing a therapy for my child, and some parents said that you can go ahead with the GFCF diet, but I saw that when I'm on that diet for the child, nutrition has become less, and he got sick also. Though, so then I unfollowed it. So I think
that is, the thing is, you had followed partly. First of all, you were not having the clear picture of intolerance for your child. Secondly,
yes, right.
you just
Yeah.
followed it blindly by taking the by asking the guidance from the other parent. So that is
Yeah.
why it has to be given only under the guidance of a doctor who is trained in that, and then accordingly adequate nutrition and supplementation is required to meet that growing demands of the child. Okay.
Okay.
But yes,
Okay.
you will definitely get the results provided if we are going in a rationalized manner.
Okay. And one more thing, this probiotic yogurt can be given, no? It's always better for these kind of kids.
Again, it's a problem. Yogurt is casein based. It's a milk product. It's a dairy product. And dairy products contain casein. So if your child is having casein intolerance, then it can cause a trouble to your child. Okay.
Okay.
So you have to be very sure in the test when we do, we get a complete idea of about, more than 200 food products, that so that it becomes a very clear idea that which child is having an intolerance to which product. Here we are not talking about allergy, we are talking about intolerance. So allergy test and intolerant test are somewhat different. Okay.
Okay.
So that is why follow that. We generally go for the test. Once we have the reports, then only we formulate a plan to the parents, and accordingly we give them and follow them.
Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Dr. Surbi, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, just want to know, are there any side effects using the probiotics?
Probiotics have no side effects. No side effects at all.
Okay, we can use long term.
Even a simple cough syrup can cause you a side effect. But when we talk about side effect, the ratio should be more than the benefits. So, so talking about the probiotics, they don't have any side effects compared, even if you go for a long term use, not at all.
Okay, doctor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? The last one or two, maybe. I saw someone was trying to say something. I'm not able to figure out. I think it was, yeah. So you suggest, doctor, should we close then, or
yes?
I think we have taken a fair number of questions also.
Yes,
most of the people, most of the people they asked. Someone by the name Dr. Surbi, I think she was trying to say something, but now she's not responding, so it's okay. Okay, thank you, doctor, very much. I think it was very good session, very engaging, and all the parents got to understand this two very important concepts. And thank you, parents, for joining us tonight. Have a very good night. Good night, doctor. I'm closing the room then. Thank you. I'll share the recording. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Good night.